So let's have a conversation about the Philadelphia 76ers. Last season, we saw Joel Embiid put up MVP type numbers. And if he didn't get derailed by injuries around January, he would have easily won the MVP because the numbers he was putting up was just video game like 36 points a night, I believe, averaging 6 assists, which was a career high for him. And the Sixers were a top 3 seed in the Eastern Conference before he got hurt. And if he had stayed healthy and the Sixers finished that top 3 seed after losing James Harden in that trade to the Clippers, and they added some complementary pieces, and you were relying on Maxey. So you had to adjust to that situation. And B would have easily won it over Jokic. There'd have been no debate to me. No disrespect to Jokic, but I think at that time, Embiid was the clear winner for MVP. Now, obviously, the questions when it comes to the 76ers is Embiid's health. Can he stay healthy in the playoffs? Can he be reliable in fourth quarter situations? Because when he did come back against the New York Knicks, his true shooting percentage was not better than Maxey's true shooting percentage in the fourth quarter. And it might be a style of play. People are saying he was still injured. But at the end of the day, it gets annoying and exhausting to make that excuse because I've seen him in situations where he played the Atlanta Hawks. I know he had the meniscus situation going on, but you have to finish a job, especially if you have a Game 7 in your building. We saw in 2023 against the Boston Celtics. Game 6 was in your building. He didn't score a point in the last 6 minutes, and Jason Tatum was shooting up bricks and was not showing up until those last 5 minutes of the game. And by the way, Tatum made all those shots over Joel Embiid. You look at the Game 7, Tatum outperformed Embiid in that game. So the list goes on with Embiid, and the excuses get old after a while. Look, I think he's a top 10 player. I don't think he's a top 5 player because I got to look at your playoff resume and say, hey, can you make an Eastern Conference Finals at some point? Can you at least do that? Because if you can't get that far, how can I label you as a top 5 player? You have to perform in the playoffs. That has to matter at some point, right? And the excuses for Embiid are just getting exhausting, and it's just repetitive at this point. Now, on media day, Joel Embiid did say he's more focused on being healthy for the playoffs instead of putting up all these stats and chasing MVPs. We'll see if that does translate and he does back up those words, but that's the focus for Embiid coming into this regular season. Now, looking at the 76ers offseason, it was really good to me. You picked up Paul George. That was the biggest signing this offseason. He shoots 41% from the three. He's a floor spacer. He can still play defense, and he can still put the ball on the floor. And he just gives you a better option at the wing instead of Tobias Harris. Tobias Harris last year was super inconsistent. He was either hot or cold, and he wasn't always reliable. Now, I understand Paul George in the playoffs can sometimes disappear. That is definitely a fact. There were moments in the Mavericks series he was not good. Dallas shut him down, and he just wasn't dependable. Now, obviously, not having Kawhi Leonard does hurt, but at the same time, this could be a different situation because he's not going to be the second or third option, or I should say the second option. Maxey could be that second option, and Paul George could be the third option. They could switch those roles when needed. So I think the pressure is still there for Philadelphia with Paul George, but at the same time, I think Paul George doesn't have to feel like, okay, I got to be this number one option, or feel like I have to be because I have Embiid and Maxey. The other pieces they picked up, Reggie Jackson at backup point guard. They also brought back Kelly Oubre, which I like because you have wing depth. You also brought in Kyle Lowry for veteran leadership. Again, another point guard. We'll see if he gets any playing time. You brought in Eric Gordon, Ubicel from France, who could be an intriguing piece if he has a role on this team. So all of a sudden, if things are going well between Oubre, Paul George, and Ubicel, you've got some depth there for the Sixers. And let's not forget about Caleb Martin and Andre Drummond. I'm not a big fan of the Drummond signing because he's really bad at free throws. I know he can rebound the basketball. He's a great rim protector. But at the same time, he creates a lot of issues on offense because he can't space the floor. So you can clog the middle and dare him to shoot or whatever. The spacing would be messed up if they have Embiid and Drummond out there at the same time. So if you're going to play him in sporadic minutes for like 5 minutes at a time, I have no problem with that. But I think they need another backup center who has more versatility. He doesn't have to shoot necessarily the 3-ball really well, but I think they need another center just to add more depth because I can't rely on Drummond in the playoffs. I think he'll be unplayable, especially in a series against the Celtics where they can just play Porzingis or Horford or go small and Drummond has no value out there. Can't really keep up with those guys in the basketball court. My biggest questions coming to the season for the Sixers is what is the rotation looking like at the wing position? Because you've got also KJ Martin, who's 6'6". You've got Caleb Martin, who's 6'5". You've got your Kelly Oubre. You've got your Ubicel, and you also got Paul George. So I think the Sixers are in a unique position right now with that situation. It's not a bad thing to have. If you find 3 guys out of those 5 players who you can rely on night in and night out, all of a sudden the Sixers look formidable and they can match up really well with the Tatums and the Jaylen Browns of the world. And they can go into those series feeling really confident. They can match up well with the Knicks with Mikal Bridges and OG Anunoby. It really comes down to finding the right rotational pieces that you can rely on going into the playoffs. But I do like the fact the Sixers have depth at the wing position. And these wings, in my opinion, are better than the past rosters that the Sixers had. And as you explore this rotation, you can figure out, okay, KJ Martin, he's a good fit. Ubisoft, not too much, but he's had his moments. Caleb Martin, good as well. And obviously Kelly Oubre and Paul George. So let's just say there's a situation where you can move off one of these pieces and get another backup big. Maybe you trade Caleb Martin, or maybe you trade KJ Martin, or maybe you trade Kelly Oubre to upgrade the power forward or center position, because that's going to help Philadelphia, because I still think they need some depth at the big man position in case Joel Embiid has another health situation, or if you're trying to limit his minutes during the regular season. I think the Sixers need to at least explore that option in the trade market just to add more depth at that position, because they're clogged with a lot of wings. It's not a bad problem to have, because you can play different lineups, but I think they should at least consider moving off of one of those wings just to upgrade that big man position so Embiid doesn't have to play heavy minutes during the regular season. And of course, the biggest question when it comes to the 76ers is, can Embiid become a reliable fourth quarter performer? Because we've seen him in situations where he doesn't show up. I know he's had his injuries as well. I will acknowledge that. But at the same time, we have seen him fumble the bag in important situations. In my opinion, in order for this situation to work for the 76ers, I think they got to play through Maxey in fourth quarter situations, because he can get to the rim at will. He can create mismatches for Embiid and Paul George. And if he gets the ball in the paint, he can swing it to Paul George. He can pass to Oubre if they're playing him at shooting guard. He can find Embiid in the paint. I think if you play through Embiid, you slow the game down. I think Maxey needs the ball so he can push the pace. We saw his performance in that Game 5 against the Knicks. It was unbelievable. So if I'm Philadelphia, the most improved player, I need Maxey to have the ball in the fourth quarter. That's not a knock on Embiid. Sometimes players, when it comes to clutch situations, they're not as strong in those moments. And also, Embiid style of play is to hold the ball, shoot from the mid-range. That's awesome, but if they're not going in, I think you need to run the plays through Maxey so you can run pick-and-roll situations where he can drive to the lane, create mismatches, make sure it's easier for Embiid and Paul George to score. I think it's important that the Sixers run that style of offense when it comes to the fourth quarter. If we see a situation where Paul George is playing isolation basketball, or Embiid, again, playing isolation basketball, and they're bricking up shots, not shooting well, and they're not in rhythm, I think it's going to hurt the Sixers offense in games where it's tight and you've got to get a bucket. So I think for the Sixers to have success, play through Maxey in those moments. He's a huge wild card, in my opinion. If you let him run this offense and he's able to play make, he's able to get downhill and just create havoc for the defense, that's going to open up more opportunities for Embiid and Paul George. In the series versus the Knicks last year, Maxey was playing 11.4 minutes a game. His true shooting percentage was 69%. That's a really good clip. So if I'm Philadelphia, I'm looking at the situation going, okay, we need Embiid, obviously. We need him to be healthy. But we also need to make sure that Maxey is the one making those decisions, so Embiid's not holding the ball for too long, because that creates double teams. And also, you don't have to just always rely on Embiid to just start the offense. It's very important that the Sixers find that balance there and make sure they have a plan in the fourth quarter, because if they play this isolation basketball where the ball isn't moving, or Maxey isn't creating havoc or just making it hard on the defense, then you become more predictable. So I think it's important that the Sixers understand that. And then find another role player who can be reliable, like Caleb Martin. We saw him in the Eastern Conference Finals against the Celtics. He was killing us. So I think if you can find a role for him, we'll see what they do with the wing position. But I do like the depth with their wings. I really do. I think they need another big, in my opinion, because if they go into the regular season or playoffs without a backup big next to Drummond, it could be a disaster, because now you're playing a lot of minutes on Joel Embiid. And Drummond is going to become unplayable at some point. They can hack Drummond. They can leave him on an island when he's out there. So I think the Sixers need to shore up the big man position just to have some versatility, and that way they have another option besides Andre Drummond off the bench. When looking at the championship window for the Sixers, this is a 2-year window opportunity. I think it's very important on how they perform in the playoffs. So let's just say they lose to the Celtics in the second round. Let's say they finish fourth, because I have them finishing fourth. And let's just say they lose in a 7-game series. It was a tough one, but George, Embiid, and Maxey all perform. They just get outplayed by Tatum and Brown. That's not a bad way to lose, because in my opinion, I think it's a win because you've built chemistry with George, Maxey, and Embiid. Now you go into next season knowing that Boston's probably going to move off Porzingis or Drew Holiday. I do believe that, because they're not going to be able to pay everybody. And also a new ownership coming in, they might want to go in a new direction, just rebuild things around Tatum and Brown. Also, on top of that, you have to compete with the New York Knicks, the Pacers, and Magic. But you have experience with these veteran guys. And obviously, Max, he's going to be heading towards his prime years. So I think for the Sixers, that's a success. But if you lose to the New York Knicks in the first or the second round, and it's not a good look, and Paul George doesn't show up, or Embiid isn't good in that series, all of a sudden you go into next season with even more pressure. I think there's a lot of pressure on this team regardless, but losing to the Celtics, you could look at it and go, okay, they were going to win back-to-back anyways, but losing to the Knicks in the second round wouldn't be a good look, because now the Knicks have all this confidence knowing that they can beat you in the playoffs. And now Embiid is under this pressure of, I got to make the Eastern Conference Finals. He might be pressing. And on top of that, for Philadelphia, they just need a good playoff performance from those guys. So again, if we lose to Boston, no big deal, but losing to the Knicks, yikes, that will definitely hurt them. Again, it's a 2-year window. So if they don't even make the Eastern Conference Finals within these next 2 seasons, and Embiid has Paul George on this team, that's going to be rough to watch. Do I think they make the Eastern Conference Finals within these 2 years? I do. But at the same time, I do need to see that. I don't think they're going to make it this year. I think they will lose in the second round to Boston. I have them finishing 4th behind Orlando and behind New York, because I just think those 2 teams are just a little bit better. I think Orlando is young and hungry. I think the Knicks are still better than the Sixers right now. But I think a year after that, they're going to be competing with the Knicks and the Magic and the Pacers going forward. I mean, obviously, boss, I'm not going to dismiss my team. I just think we might go through a little bit of an overhaul during the offseason, because we're not going to be able to pay everybody. And we're going to lose some pieces that, like Al Horford, he'll be a huge loss once he's retired. So that's just my opinion, though. So we'll see how this all works out for the Sixers. I do expect Embiid to be really good. Hopefully they can serve his minutes so he can be ready for the playoffs. And we'll see if the Sixers make a run at it. Thank you guys for watching today. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. I'd love to hear your thoughts on how the Sixers are going to do this year. And I'll see you in the next one.